because sometimes there's a reason for those cost markups. It reminds me of when we saw there was that one like Twitter post where somebody was like, this is a single steel bolt. It cost $50, you know, and it's used in aerospace. And it's like, okay, if that's an aerospace grade machine bolt, that thing is probably spec'd down to like the billionth of a micrometer, you know, like there's probably like that's being used in aerospace. I assume, and not just regular. I mean, they're not building, you know, like an Airbus with that. Like that's probably being used in some insanely fancy shit, you know. Like I would rather, I don't want to buy the bolts being used in that hardware from Home Depot. I'll say that much. True story, my grandfather was appointed Undersecretary of Defense under Reagan with a job of cutting Pentagon spending. Turns out the job was made up as a joint plan by both Reagan's COS and Tip O'Neill, the Democratic Speaker of the House at the time, to set up to fail, knowing full well the job was impossible, and he was subsequently fired. A lifelong GOPer, he never voted Republican again after that. I have no way of knowing whether you're telling the truth, but I choose to believe you because that sounds pretty accurate, yeah. MIC, baby! I hate Friedman, man. It's genuinely insane how much I hate him. What a spineless, valueless wretch. I saw his interview of Bernie Sanders, and the only time he expressed an opinion was to defend Elon Musk. I'm not joking. It was 100% questions directed at Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders said something that could be like interpreted as a criticism of Elon, and Lex Friedman was like, well, hold on. He's like the epic Reddit man who builds us rocket machines that'll take us to Mars and does lots of good for science, right? Does Lex have a spine dependent on the subject then? Well, no. He just follows the money. How the shit do people watch Lex without getting bored? For the people he gets on, Lex himself is incredibly boring. Kind of like Joe Rogan, honestly. Joe bounces off other people pretty well, but on his own, I think that he's pretty uninteresting, you know? 5-hour podcast between Lex and Joe Rogan. See, that would be really boring, which kind of reaffirms the point, right? The Elon Rogan podcasts were both horrible. Well, they got a lot of views.